Hey everybody, this is Doomhammer with the 2015 offseason. The last offseason video was the coach firings and some of the coach prospects. In this video, we're going to go over who is going where. Now, there are 6 teams who are replacing their head coach: the Chicago Bears, Buffalo Bills, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Washington Commanders, San Francisco 49ers, and the New York Giants. So let's get into the first team, which is the Chicago Bears. And so the Chicago Bears hire Ryan Pace as their new general manager, and he ends up bringing in Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio is the former Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator. Miami went 15-2. So he was definitely one of the top coaching candidates in the league, and it really showed. Now, Chicago has not been the defensive powerhouse that we all remembered in the 2000s, early 2010s, and we want to get back to that. They used to have Dick Duran as their coach. They brought in Johnny Lynn, who was the defensive coordinator for the New York Giants, as their head coach for 3 seasons, then was fired. They brought in an offensive-minded coach with Bruce Arians for several years, made the playoffs in 3 out of 6 seasons, had a week 5-12 year with really bad quarterback play, which led to Bruce Arians getting let go. But now they're getting back to that common standard Chicago-style defense. So Vic Fangio gets the head coaching job here in Chicago. And so with Vic Fangio, he is bringing with him Marty Morningway, the former head coach of the Washington Commanders. He had been the Philadelphia Eagles offensive coordinator after his Detroit Lions head coaching opportunity. So he's been kind of seen as a very innovative offensive mind, good offensive coordinator. So he joins Vic Fangio. And they also bring in Jim Schwartz, who used to be the Baltimore Ravens head coach. He was the New York Giants defensive coordinator for 1 season. So we're trying to see if he can bring that hard-hitting Chicago defense back to Chicago, and we'll see if that works out. Then we've got the Buffalo Bills, and they sign Doug Whaley as their general manager, and he brings in Joe Philbin. Joe Philbin is taking on after 3 years of Rex Ryan, who went 7-10, 7-10, and 5-12. He tried to make E.J. Manuel work, and it did not work. But what did work was the Jacksonville Jaguars. When Ray Horton became the head coach in 2012-2013, he brought Joe Philbin in as his offensive coordinator. And with Philbin, and they had the quarterback Colt McCoy, they went from 5-12 their first year. I don't know if Colt McCoy was on that team. But then in 2013-2014, they improved to 8-9 with Colt McCoy. They kept Colt McCoy one more year, and he went 10-7, won the division, and took them to the playoffs. So with a mediocre quarterback, with, really, I don't think is that talented of a team, they were able to get to the playoffs with a double-digit record. And with that success, Doug Whaley, Buffalo Bills, management, I think it's, let's see, who's their owner? Their owner is Ralph Wilson. That's right, Ralph Wilson. They're excited to bring Joe Philbin in and to bring his coaching staff in. And so joining Joe Philbin in Buffalo is his former wide receivers coordinator, or wide receivers coach, Dave Canales. He was a wide receiver coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Did a great job working with that squad with like Chris Owusu, Tavon Austin. So he joins as the offensive coordinator. And then the Denver Broncos defensive backs coach and a former coordinator for the Green Bay Packers, Ed Donatel, also joins Joe Philbin in Buffalo. So we will see how this squad does this upcoming season in probably one of the toughest divisions in football. They've got the Patriots, they got the Jets, and they have the Super Bowl defending champion Dolphins all in their division. And they kind of need a lot of help on this roster to even think about competing against all of them. Now we've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are keeping offensive coordinator Vinny Testaverde of the Miami Dolphins in the state of Florida, and he is going to be their new head coach. Now, in my franchise, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have only had 2 coaches, John Gruden, then Ron Rivera. Rivera having 8 seasons with the team, but only 2 playoff appearances, which did include 1 Super Bowl appearance. But now, after some mediocre seasons, Rivera is out, and the new Super Bowl champion offensive coordinator, Vinny Testaverde, is the man. He is brought in by their new general manager, Jason Licht. And so, one of the things that happened to this franchise is that I brought Vinny Testaverde in with the Houston Texans as a quarterbacks coach back in like 03 or 04, something like that. He had about 3 seasons with the Texans, then about 4 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys, and this was when Vince Young was on his rise as a potential superstar. And so Jim Harbaugh in 2011 brought in Vinny Testaverde as his offensive coordinator, and that first season they made it to the Super Bowl and then lost the 49ers. So great display there. Good job developing Cam Newton in that rookie season to make the Super Bowl, but unfortunately it wasn't enough to win it. Then they went 8-9, disappointing. And then the last 2 seasons, 12-5, and then 15-2, winning the Super Bowl. So that was just a crazy good season. So as we saw, Vic Fangio goes to the Chicago Bears, and Vinny Testaverde goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so Vinny Testaverde is bringing Randall Cunningham, the other quarterback around his time. He's been an offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, and that's been a good success for him, except Washington all got cleared out, so they are no longer needing any sort of services from him anymore. He also was with the Jacksonville Jaguars as an offensive coordinator, and he all started as a quarterbacks coach with the Seattle Seahawks. But he is now going to be joining Vinny Testaverde, the other quarterback here in the Bay Area. And then their defensive coordinator is going to be Brian Flores, defensive backs coach with the New England Patriots. Now, Testaverde and Cunningham are both 52 years old around this time. Flores is about 34. So he's a lot younger, but like he went from linebackers coach directly to head coach in 2019. And so I thought, the Patriots still do well. He's been coaching Darrelle Revis, some other defensive backs in New England. So why not give him the chance to be a coordinator? And especially with someone like Vinny Testaverde, who I perceive as more of a younger type coordinator, new head coach. And so I think it's going to be a unique kind of young team here in Tampa Bay, and we will see if they are able to get past that kind of 9-8, 8-9 standstill that they've been having these past few seasons, especially going up against the Panthers, the Saints, and really it's the Falcons with Peyton Manning who have been their biggest concern in recent seasons. Now we go to the Washington Commanders, where Scott McLaughlin, the new general manager after firing Vinny Cerrato as GM, we've got Chuck Pagano coming in as the head coach of the Washington Commanders. This is after 4 years with Marty Morningway. Now, Chuck Pagano has bounced around the league a little bit. He's been in Cleveland. He's been in Chicago. He's been, let's see, where else? Most recently, he was the St. Louis Rams defensive coordinator when they had their 13-4 season, just absolutely tearing people up. On defense, they were pretty solid this year. They had 3 years with him as their defensive coordinator. And so with this emergence this season, Chuck Pagano, who also in real life had a head coaching gig a few years earlier, I felt was a great fit for this Washington Commanders team. They go from an offensive-minded coach in Marty Morningway. Now they switch over to getting more of a defensive coordinator, a defensive-minded coach, going up against the Andy Reids and Mike Shanahan's, because Mike Shanahan's the head coach. Kyle's the coordinator in Dallas. And Giants are also getting a new coach. But right now, the Commanders are trying to shake some things up, and I think Chuck Pagano is going to provide some stability in that Washington team, especially with quarterback Johnny Manziel potentially being their starter next year, despite a rocky 0-6 season and then injury. And joining Chuck Pagano in the capital city is Mark Trestman. Mark Trestman has been an offensive coordinator for the Oakland Raiders, the Green Bay Packers. He was a quarterback's coach for a bit with the New York Giants. And then he was kind of off on his own for a while. I hadn't had him on any team. But this was around the time when Mark Trestman became the Chicago Bears head coach. I think he became the Bears head coach in 2013 to 2014. So he would have been back in the league maybe 2 years earlier in my franchise. But I'm just accounting it as he's with the Montreal Alouettes, probably Alouettes. So we're just saying he was a head coach there, and now he decided to come back for Chuck Pagano. And then we have Ken Norton Jr., the defensive coordinator. He was the linebackers coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, and he was also a linebackers coach for the recent Seattle Seahawks. And so I figured, you know what? Let's give him a chance to be a coordinator, and this will be your Washington Commanders coaching staff heading into next year. And then we've got the New York Giants sticking with the NFC East coaching changes. They bring in John Dorsey. He was with the Green Bay Packers for a while, and really, Mike Tomlin and that team just didn't gel. They were like really good or really bad every other year, and they had a lot of talent, so it wasn't really John Dorsey's fault, but he's now the new general manager for the Giants, and he brings in John Gruden, the former Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach. Now, in my franchise, John Gruden never won a Super Bowl, because that first season, the Bills won the Super Bowl and not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So he had a few seasons with Tampa Bay, then left, and he basically counted as he did his quarterback camp and going to the media and broadcast, and I figured he's the type of personality that would take on a city like New York, and I think he's going to talk a lot of crap, and I think he's going to be someone that's going to try to change the culture there in New York, and we will see if that works. But right now, John Dorsey and John Gruden taking on New York. And John Gruden decides to bring Greg Olson as offensive coordinator. Greg Olson has bounced around the league a bit. He's been like a quarterback's coach for the Chicago Bears, the New England Patriots. He was the offensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns for several seasons when he was with Jim Tressel in Cleveland. And then recently he had one season with the Kansas City Chiefs, where he helped Justin Hunter become a top 5 wide receiver. And I thought, you know what? Let's give him the chance again to be an offensive coordinator. In real life, he was still coordinating at this time, so I thought let's bring John Gruden in with a veteran offensive coordinator and someone who's been around the league for a while. And defensively, they bring in Mike Smith, who was once the defensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills during the Mike Mularkey years. He's also been a linebacker and D-line coach for the Baltimore Ravens, and then he bounced to the San Diego Chargers these past 2 seasons. So Mike Smith gets another opportunity as a coordinator. He has never been a head coach yet. I will probably try to see if he can position himself that way, depending on how his career here in New York goes. But there are your New York Giants coaching staff. The 49ers have general manager Trent Balk, and he brings in the offensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos, Jedd Fisch. So Jedd Fisch was a Ravens wide receivers coach, and he was also a receivers coach with, let's see, where was he? It was Baltimore and New York Giants. But in the last 2 seasons with the Denver Broncos, they increased their win record each year. They were a contender, and really he kind of transformed Sam Bradford into an actual elite quarterback. And so the San Francisco 49ers were looking to try to get younger at the position. They want someone that could be a coach for the long term. Tom Coughlin gave them 2 Super Bowl victories and 3 appearances to the Super Bowl. But after a really difficult season, they are likely to move on from Drew Brees, who's 36, 37 years old. They've got the number 1 overall pick, and we will see how the 49ers are able to redevelop this franchise. And with Jedd Fisch being a newer head coach, and in real life never being a head coach, he is joined by 2 recently fired head coaches to join his coaching staff. He's got Bruce Arians from the Chicago Bears, who's been there for multiple seasons. He was the one that had Mark Sanchez as his quarterback for a couple seasons, survived when he didn't really ascend too much farther, brought in Jason Campbell, who was pretty solid for them, took them to the playoffs a few times, but then had that crumble this past year with the QB controversy of Campbell, Palmer, Cutler. But he is now going to the San Francisco Bay Area to be the offensive coordinator, where he did fairly well with Cleveland and Pittsburgh in the past. And then you've got Rex Ryan coming in from the Buffalo Bills. Rex Ryan is actually right now the weaker of the Ryan brothers, as Rob Ryan is 2 years with the Detroit Lions, taking them to the playoffs. Maybe I think it's 3 seasons total, but 2 in the playoffs. So Rex Ryan fails in Buffalo, but comes in as their defensive coordinator to help out the San Francisco defense with Jedd Fisch. And now I'm going to do a quick recap of all the rest of the teams in the league and their coaching staff so that you have an idea of who is where. So in the Bengals, we've got Mike Zimmer as head coach, Matt Cavanaugh, offensive coordinator, and Wade Phillips as defensive coordinator. They made the playoffs last year in their first season together, and they're all returning for year 2. Then you've got the Cleveland Browns, another Mike here in the AFC North. Mike Pettin, he was a real head coach in Cleveland around this time. They were the ones that actually drafted Johnny Manziel, but the Browns have Terrell Pryor, so they've been pretty successful with him. They do bring in Brian Dable and Johnny Holland. They were on the same coaching staff last year, which brought Cleveland into the playoffs, and they saw a playoff victory before falling to the Miami Dolphins in the divisional round. Then the Baltimore Ravens had rookie head coach Dan Quinn. He went 7-10 last year. He has Josh McDaniels and Mike Tomlin as his offensive and defensive coordinator. We will see if they are able to get the Ravens past the Browns and the Bengals this year. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're running with Lovie Smith as their head coach. He's been there ever since they got rid of Bill Cowher back in 2003, so 2004 and onwards. Lovie Smith is a 2-time Super Bowl champion for the Steelers. He brings back Gary Kubiak for his 5th season as the offensive coordinator. Joe Vitt, his former defensive coordinator, is moving on. I'm saying he's going to college or somewhere else. And they are promoting Mike Vrabel, their linebackers coach, to being their defensive coordinator here in Pittsburgh. And then we've got Rob Ryan, who shockingly is doing really well in Detroit. His first season he went 6-11, not so great. Thought, yeah, that's typical Detroit. Then he went 11-6 and then 10-7 last season, all with Ryan Tannehill as his main guy as quarterback. So he's been doing pretty well. Dan Quinn was his defensive coordinator the first 2 years. Greg Mattison came in last year and he is returning again. And then Scott Linehan has been the offensive coordinator for the past 3 seasons and also is returning. Then we got the Green Bay Packers with Jeep Christ. He was the former offensive coordinator for the AFC champion Raiders in the 2013-2014 season. They lost the Super Bowl. But Christ started off with like an 0-5 start, and then Brock Osweiler turned their season around. So we'll see how year 2 goes with Jeep Christ as they head into this offseason with like 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, 2 third-round picks. It's crazy. A lot of draft capital and a lot of cap space. He is joined by Darrell Bevell, his offensive coordinator last year, and Dean Pease, his defensive coordinator last year. So the team is set to return here in the 2015-2016 season. Then the Minnesota Vikings have been with Perry Fewell. They were 11-6 2 years ago, 7-10 this year, 7-10 when he first coached in 2012-2013. They did draft the likes of RG3, who was the league MVP in the 2013 season. He's joined by Terry Shea and Jack Del Rio as his 2 coordinators. They've been together the past 3 seasons and will be returning as a unit next year. The Denver Broncos are coming back with Doug Marrone, who's been to 3 straight playoff appearances, each year getting better. He started out 6-11, then 10-7, 11-6, 12-5 last year. Jedd Fisch, his offensive coordinator, is off to be the head coach of the 49ers, so Adam Gase is now the offensive coordinator. And then they used to have Mike Zimmer as their defensive coordinator. He went to the Bengals last season, and now they have Dick LeBeau returning for his 2nd season after replacing Mike Zimmer for that defensive coordinator position. Then the San Diego Chargers are still rolling with Sean Payton. Sean Payton became their head coach in 2005, drafted Aaron Rodgers, and after about 1 week with Drew Brees, or 2 weeks, they traded him away, and then it's been Aaron Rodgers ever since. Sean Payton has made the playoffs in every single season he has coached. He has been the coach of the year in 2007, and he had a 9-8 season last year, which was the worst record they've had since 2006. Every other year has been 11, 12, or 13 wins. And so we'll see how they handle this next upcoming season. He had Frank Reich as an offensive coordinator for many years, then he went off to coach in college, and Jason Garrett has been coaching for the past 4 years as the OC, and then the Chargers defensive coordinator was Herm Edwards back in 2005, then he left. Gus Bradley coached for several years, and before he got the head coaching job with the Tennessee Titans. And then it's been Bob Sutton the past 2 years. So Peyton, Garrett, and Sutton are your Chargers coaching staff. The Kansas City Chiefs have second-year coach Raheem Morris, offensive coordinator Greg Roman, and defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver, all returning for their second season. Raheem Morris went 7-10 last year, which was an improvement with rookie quarterback Blake Bortles, a top 5 rusher with Trent Richardson. I will see how they're able to kind of level up this team. They went from 4-13, 5-12 with Tony Sparano to 7-10 with Morris. So we'll see if he can grow this team in what is a very difficult division with the Chargers, Broncos, and Oakland Raiders all being a playoff-worthy team the past few seasons. The Raiders are running with Hugh Jackson in his now 5th season with the Oakland Raiders. He was 7-10 his first year, 8-9 his second year, on the cusp of maybe getting fired. And then he went to the Super Bowl, lost, unfortunately. And then they went 11-6 that year. And last season they went 8-9. So Jeep Christ, the offensive coordinator when Hugh Jackson started, got promoted to the Green Bay head coach. So Steve Sarkisian was the offensive coordinator last year for Matt Ryan, and he's returning. And then they had Dennis Allen for 2 years, and then it just didn't really work out, so he got rid of him when they were 7 and 8 win teams. And so Romeo Crennel came in, and he has helped them get to the Super Bowl. They've had a pretty solid defense with him. So it's Hugh Jackson, Steve Sarkisian, and Romeo Crennel for the Raiders. And the Arizona Cardinals have John DeFilippo. He won the Super Bowl in his rookie year in 2013, 12-5. Last year he was 11-6, and that was 6 wins with Derek Anderson, the backup quarterback. So that helped them get into the playoffs. He originally had Norv Turner his first year, and then Norv Turner became the coach of the Indianapolis Colts. And they've had Tim Walton as their DC the entire time. Mike McCoy joined the team last year, and so it's going to be DeFilippo, Mike McCoy, and Tim Walton. Then we've got Mike McCarthy leading the St. Louis Rams. They're about a year or two away from becoming the LA Rams. But yeah, they went 8-9 his first year, 6-11 his second year, and kind of on the mini hot seat because they weren't really turning it around. He drafted Andrew Luck in his first year, and then last year they went 14-3, making the playoffs, number 1 seed, but had the first divisional round game loss to the Dallas Cowboys. Now, McCarthy had Deuce Staley as his offensive coordinator the first 2 seasons, let Deuce Staley go, and then brought Sean McVay in. So Sean McVay really turned that offense around. We can see him being a potential coaching candidate coming up. And then Kevin Ramsey just got the promotion right now because Chuck Pagano ended up getting the coaching job in Washington. And Kevin Ramsey has been like the DB coach in Dallas. He's been with the Jets before, the Cardinals, but he's never been a coordinator, so he's got his chance now. Then we got Pete Carroll entering his 4th season as the Seahawks head coach, and it was pretty rough starting out. It was 6-11, then 5-12, and then when he has added Matthew Stafford and that big offensive repertoire of like Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, he's got Marshawn Lynch. He ended up turning his season around. And so last year, Pete Carroll was doing pretty well. He did fire Dirk Cutter after 2 seasons and then brought in Anthony Lynn. So Anthony Lynn was there last season, and we saw the success they had. And then Dick Duran has been there for all 3 seasons and will be returning for his 4th season. We will see if Pete Carroll can keep the Seahawks relevant here in this franchise. Now we're going to go to the NFC East. We've already seen the Commanders and Giants coach changes. So we're going to go and take a look at Dallas. So Mike Shanahan finally did it. He finally got Dallas to be a bit more relevant. They have been steadily increasing every season. They went 7-10, 6-11, then 9-8, and now 11-6, making the playoffs. And unfortunately, he had the injury to Russell Wilson in the first round of the wild card, and they made it to the NFC Championship game only to fall short to the Eagles. Now, he has been with his son, Kyle Shanahan, the offensive coordinator, who is kind of in the mix for a head coaching job someday. He had 3 years with Jim Haslett, and then last year they replaced Haslett with Dennis Thurman. So Dennis Thurman kind of came in to be a younger option for this team. Thurman used to be the defensive backs coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and so he ends up getting the coordinator job as Jim Haslett moves on. So Shanahan and both Shanahans are in there for their 5th season, and then Dennis Thurman is coming back for his 2nd season. Then we have the Philadelphia Eagles, and Andy Reid is one of 3 coaches in my franchise who started in the 2002 season, the original roster, and has not been fired or removed. So he has been to 3 Super Bowls. He won 1 in 2012, 2013. He's been head coach of the year, only missed the playoffs twice in 13 seasons. Now, every single offensive coordinator so far has been promoted to a head coach. That was Brad Childress the first 2 seasons. Then he went to the Atlanta Falcons and is still the head coach. Then Marty Morningway was there for about 6 years. Then he went to go coach the Commanders, and he just got fired. Then John DeFilippo was the coordinator for 3 years, and then went to Arizona and won a Super Bowl. And now they have Doug Peterson. We'll see if he ends up getting a promotion sometime soon. As for defense, they used to have Jim Johnson. Then they have Dale Lindsey. Now, as for defensive coordinator, they've had Jim Johnson for the first 7 years on the team. Then they had Dale Lindsey, and then what I've kind of said was Dale Lindsey's been due for a head coaching job, and since he didn't get one, I'm saying that he's now going to an NCAA team because he's kind of earned that spot, and I feel like I don't alternate coordinators and positional coaches as often. So he's let go, or not let go, but he's pursuing another opportunity in the NCAA. And then they bring in the defensive coordinator from the San Francisco 49ers who got let go with the Tom Coughlin firing spree, and that's Pepper Johnson. Pepper Johnson was with the New England Patriots, got the DC coaching job in San Fran, and now is taking on the Philadelphia Eagles defensive coaching position. The Super Bowl defending Miami Dolphins are running with Jim Harbaugh, who is Coach of the Year and Super Bowl champion. He went to the Super Bowl in his first season, 9-8. They were the 7th seed, went all the way, and then lost to the 49ers in the championship game. And then he went 8-9, missed the playoffs, bounced back with a 12-5 season, then a 15-2 season, which was this last one. So he's in year 5 now. He had Vinny Testaverde the entire time for 4 straight seasons, and now they bring Dan Campbell, who was their tight ends coach the last 4 seasons, so he gets promoted from within. And then on the defensive side, they promote Lou Anarumo to fill in the vacancy created by Vic Fangio. Very difficult to replace both your coordinators, but the Miami Dolphins will do just that. And they bring in 2 younger rising star coaches, and I have no doubt that as the Miami Dolphins continue to have success, Dan Campbell and Lou Anarumo are going to be some top coaching opportunities for other teams to get their head coaches. Then we've got the New York Jets. Chip Kelly in his 3rd season now, getting started. He's been there for 2 seasons. First year he went 11-6, and his 2nd season he went 11-6. This time he went to the AFC Championship game, only to fall short to the Miami Dolphins. Now, yeah, he looks just as confused there as you would expect in real life. But he's been with Gene Huey, his offensive coordinator, for 2 seasons. He's coming back. He started off with Dan Pease, but then they ended up moving on from Dan Pease to go with Greg Minuski. Greg Minuski, he's been with the San Diego Chargers a long time ago, the Houston Texans. Now he's getting his start as but he gets his chance as the defensive coordinator for the New York Jets. This is a very long video when you edit it all at once. And so Kelly, Huey, Minuski, the Jets team moving into their 2nd season altogether, 3rd season for Chip Kelly and Gene Huey. Now we've got the New England Patriots, which is a very unique situation. So like Andy Reid, Bill Belichick has been the 2002 original roster head coach that has stuck with his team the entire time. But he hasn't always made the playoffs. He missed the playoffs his first 2 seasons. Then he went 13-3 and was Coach of the Year. Then he went on a streak of playoff appearances. He made 2 back-to-back Super Bowls and won both of them. Then he won the Coach of the Year in 2012 and 2013, but was 8-9 the last 2 seasons. So I don't know if he's technically should be on the hot seat or if his coordinators need to be gotten rid of. But he's at Bill O'Brien since 2010. He had Bobby Petrino for 1 year before that, Josh McDaniels, Charlie Weiss. And then defensively, he had Romeo Crennel for 3 years before he was promoted. Then Rob Ryan for many seasons, and he got promoted to Detroit. And now it's been Matt Patricia for 3 seasons, now on his 4th season. So we will see if there's a shakeup coming in New England, because 2 seasons of no playoff berths when you're up against the Jets and the Dolphins and the Bills. Even though in real life the Jets and the Dolphins were garbage during this time, and my franchise, they have Cam Newton, Calvin Johnson, Alex Smith, Percy Harvin, stuff like that for the Jets. They are in a more difficult division, so I'm giving some grace. And because he's a 2-time Coach of the Year, 2-time Super Bowl champion, and he's 3 Super Bowls in his entire career, including the season before I started, the 2001-2002 season. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champion, and so I'm still keeping him around. But if they have another season where they miss the playoffs, it could be bye-bye Bill. The Indianapolis Colts had a rough 4-13 season last year with Norv Turner, now in his 2nd season with the Indianapolis Colts. He is also with his entire team, Tony Sparano and Todd Bowles, his offensive and defensive coordinator. The Colts were with Tony Dungy when they won back-to-back Super Bowls in 2005, the 2006 and 2007 Super Bowl. They missed the playoffs the first season with Dungy, but then made the playoffs ever since. Then Bill Cowher became the coach after Tony Dungy retired. He went to 3 straight playoffs, and then a 4th year he went to the Super Bowl and lost, unfortunately. And then Bill Cowher had a 6-11 season. It was a challenge between Brady Quinn and Kirk Cousins. He ended up getting let go after that 6-11 season as just not good enough and kind of searching for the right coach. And so Norv Turner came in, since he had a lot of success in Minnesota for many years. He had the Dante Culpepper journey, but 4-13 is not great. We'll see with the 3rd overall pick in the draft and maybe a more strategic offseason, the Indianapolis Colts can bounce back from this kind of 2-year lull of being more of a bottom team in the league. Then we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars. They just made the playoffs with head coach Ray Horton, and it was a unique pickup for him. He went 5-12 his first season, which wasn't great, 8-9 his second season, so there was growth, and then he finally made it with 10-7 to the playoffs, and with an unlikely quarterback with Colt McCoy. So that was an interesting development on his part. He used to be a DB coach in Detroit. He was the defensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons for many, many seasons. He was probably passed up for head coaching jobs multiple times when he was working with Brad Childress, but he ended up getting his coaching gig, and he's a playoff coach, which is quite impressive. Then we lost Joe Philbin, right, to the Buffalo Bills. So Zach Taylor is going to be the new offensive coordinator for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Zach Taylor has been the quarterback's coach for two years with the Philadelphia Eagles, and now gets his offensive coaching gig. And then Mike Singletary has been there for the past 3 seasons, and now starting his 4th. The Houston Texans are riding with Jeff Fisher. He went 6-11 his first season in 2011-2012, then 11-6 making the playoffs, 8-9, 7-10. So a Jeff Fisher kind of career. They're 8 games, 7-game wins. They've been working with Mark Sanchez the past few seasons. Ever since Jeff Fisher became the coach, he brought in the Texas head coach Mac Brown as his offensive coordinator, and then Greg Robinson, his defensive coordinator. So we will see how Houston bounces back. Do they stay in the middle of the pack, those 8-win, 7-win seasons? Do they finally escalate to a playoff contender like they were in 2012? Or is this going to be Jeff Fisher all over again? Then we've got 3rd-year head coach Gus Bradley. He went 11-6 his rookie year with Tavares Jackson. It was a fantastic season. Made the playoffs. And then he went 7-10 last year. He has the same coaching staff since the start, Mike Martz and Leslie Frazier, offensive and defensive coordinators. Mike Martz almost worked himself into a new head coaching job, but I passed on him for that year, and they went 7-10 the following. So we'll see how the Tennessee Titans do this offseason. They still have Tavares Jackson, who's starting to age now, but he's been kind of that journeyman quarterback. And then Gus Bradley's known for his defense. He was with the San Diego Chargers for many seasons, and so he'll be entering that 3rd season as a head coach. The Atlanta Falcons have had stability with Brad Childress ever since the 2004 season. He had Michael Vick, who went 4-6. He also had Josh Harris and Cliff Kingsbury. But then he really picked up in 2005 to 2007, where A.J. Feely, the one backup quarterback for the Eagles, was a reliable starter, winning 10 games one season, winning, 9 games another season. And so he was very good with quarterbacks that were not very talented and still making the playoffs or being competitive. Then he had Jason Campbell, the rookie that was drafted in 2005, ended up starting to take more of the starter role. And then they swapped out Campbell for Peyton Manning, and since then they've made the playoffs ever since. They have like a very low-rated roster, but they still find a way to make it to the postseason. Childress has had Todd Haley, who was promoted to a head coach. David Culley. Then Culley was removed for Ken Whisenhunt, who is the current offensive coordinator the past 2 seasons and now entering his 3rd. Then defensive coordinators was Wade Phillips, who got a head coaching job. They had Ray Horton for many years. Now he's doing great in Jacksonville. Raheem Morris, who's now in charge of the Chiefs. And last season they had Greg Williams, and this season they will have Greg Williams again, and he won the Super Bowl with the Buffalo Bills. He's been the head coach of the St. Louis Rams, and now he's kind of taking on that defensive coordinator role moving forward. The 3rd team with a head coach that I have never fired or removed ever since I began back in 2002 is John Fox and the Panthers. John Fox has made the playoffs for quite a while, multiple years in the postseason. We also noticed that he has won, or not, you don't see on the screen, but he has won Coach of the Year 4 times. He's had like the top 1, top 2 defense for many, many years. Now this year he went 9-8. And he failed to make the playoffs, which wasn't great. He has Mike Shula as his current offensive coordinator, and then Roman Pfeiffer, his current defensive coordinator. And he's had coaches like Jack Del Rio, Eric Mangini, Greg Schiano, Johnny Lynn. All of them had head coaching jobs except for Johnny Lynn after, because Johnny Lynn was with the Giants and he got fired, and then he went to the Panthers. But they had Dan Henning and Mike Shula as offensive coordinators, and they really have been riding with elite quarterback Joe Flacco. The last team we'll go over, and thanks for sticking so long with this video, is the New Orleans Saints with head coach Pat Shurmur. This is going to be his 3rd season after only going 5-12 in back-to-back seasons. So not loving it. After his 1st season, they had Greg Marshall. They fired him, and they brought in Pep Hamilton, who was the coach of the Titans, and trying to get some more better offensive play calling here. And then Marvin Lewis, the reliable Bengals head coach for many years, he comes in as defensive coordinator the past 2 years and is entering his 3rd season. So we'll see if the Saints are able to put anything together. But right now, Pat Shurmur's seat is incredibly, incredibly hot. But thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, this is my little insane reality that I've created and kept track of. So glad you're able to partake in it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like. Subscribe to the channel if you want more updates and more history in this league. We've got a lot of off-season coming up, from re-signings, signings, draft, and then we'll get started on the next season.